Okay, folks, it's 4 o'clock. This is the August 18th, 2016 Board of Health meeting. Just like to remind everybody out there, this is being recorded by audio and visually. Before we get started, public comment. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to talk about to the board that's not on the agenda? Anybody? Okay. Well, you can say it. You can.
Please go up to the microphone.
Reference to
Helene, could you maybe step to the mic and just give your name for the...
Think of it as for the tape when everybody looks you up on demand, Helene. and can't wait to watch.
How's that?
Great.
I'd like to make reference to variance 69.05, and I am citing the words enforcement will do manifest injustice to the property of the owner. Also, my understanding that prior to doing the septic system, the property owner will need an engineer, a situation which obviously will cost, by my standards, an exorbitant cost. After talking with my nephew, who lives in Rainham, Massachusetts, he talked with his lawyer, with whom he's very friendly, who lives in another city in Massachusetts, that he said that under the circumstances that my nephew described to him, and that he'd be perfectly willing to talk with me without charge. I didn't do that. He said I cannot be forced to hook up to the town sewer. But obviously, I choose not to do so. And I don't see how I can be forced to do that by any law that I know of. There may be a town vote, there may be whatever, but it's not the law. Thank you.
We're going to be coming back to your variance because that's on the agenda. The comment was for people that might have wanted to say something that wasn't on the agenda. We're going to come back to you in a few minutes. Okay?
I didn't understand
what
you said.
Yeah.
I have a hearing issue.
Okay. We'll be circling back to your case in a few minutes, okay? And we'll be calling you back up and we'll be taking it into deliberation. Okay.
Review of the minutes.
Looked okay to me?
I'm all set.
Any comments, changes?
No.
Seeing none. We'll approve the minutes of July. Okay, I'll turn this over to Roberto.
All right. So the next thing on the agenda right now is the waiver for the biological packaging regulation for coffee lids. Specifically, there is a at One Tombs Court, the Espresso To Go is requesting that they do not use compostable coffee lids because their customers prefer the tear top lift coffee lids. And those tear top, they don't make them in compostable plastic. I'm just wondering if you're here. Okay, so she would like to speak up.
Hi, I'm Terry Dyan. I'm the owner of Espresso and Fast Forward. I brought you a copy of the lid that I'm requesting to continue using. I brought one that we do use that will be available as a compostable lid. That one I can't find. And the dome lid with the hole in it, we use it for cappuccinos and lattes and our specialty drinks. The flat lid, which is over there, we use for just our regular coffee drinks, just regular cups of coffee. About 2 years ago, I tried to switch over to those completely, to the dome lid. My customers wigged out, to be easy about that. You can't drive a truck without spilling coffee out of the dome lids. You can't put them in your car and go anywhere without spilling. So we have these little coffee plugs, which are also made of plastic, which are not compostable. We use for people who are walking and want to keep the coffee hot, for the specialty drinks that have foam in them.
So this is like a plug?
It's a plug
Yeah,
for the
plugs
dome
in
lid,
the dome.
essentially. It fits right in there. It's made specifically for that.
Right. More than I ever wanted to know.
Yeah, it's not really something that I ever wanted to do, but we had so many requests because it's so popular off island to do that for people that I found a distributor and got them. But when I have customers who come in every day and buy 8 or 10 coffees and they're walking out with a stack of coffees, they can't stack a coffee with the plug in it. And they can't get to the job site without spilling coffee. We try and offer as many options as we can, boxes of coffee, all kinds of solutions to that. But there are many people who just don't want that solution yet. I think over time they might be able to do that, but
So this is the one you're supposed to use.
that is the one we currently use for most of our regular straight coffee.
Right.
I cannot buy that in a compostable lid. The other one I can replace. I can't get that one in a lid. I go through a lot of them, but I can't, they don't manufacture that type of lid. Anything that's sealed without a hole in it, they don't make those yet. So I'm asking for a variance to hopefully see if maybe in the market that's going to be something that comes along in the next year, especially, you know. I mean, I think even the dome lids haven't even been compostable for more than 2 years. I don't think anything in that type of a plastic has even been around for more than 2 years. So
In our research, we found the same. The dome lids are the ones that are definitely in the compostable. You can find those, and many manufacturers make the dome lids in compostable. But the little flat ones, for some reason, either they haven't been able to figure out how to set that plastic so that it doesn't tear, or they're just not willing to make them like that. But we haven't found them either.
What are all the other people that have coffee to go? What kind of tops do they use?
I think the Bean uses the ones, just the dome lids. But when the Bean, their customers are mostly in town, and they're walking in town.
Okay.
My customers are all out of town, they're in vehicles, and they're moving.
Okay.
And that's the problem with that dome lid, is that I did try it, and everybody came back to me, and within 5 days, I had probably 300 customers complain to me about spillage in their trucks.
So, well, would the lids at the bake shop be similar? I mean, is that a nod?
I'm not sure
Think of
what
an out-of-town
I don't
place,
know what
Terry.
the bake shop uses for their coffee lids,
Yeah,
to
okay.
be honest with you. I really do. And I don't know if it's that
They
big
use
of
a dome. Yeah, they use domes.
I don't know if their sales are as big as what ours are, to be honest with you. I don't know if they have,
Yeah, it's a different deal, I got you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments, Jim?
It seems like it's not a huge deal, but on the other hand, if you start picking and choosing every lid and cup, and it gets to be a bit of an issue. I don't know what else to do, Roberto, so. You know.
It's a tough situation. She brings up an excellent point that they just don't make that one in compostable. They just don't. We haven't been able to find it. You can do the plugs, but at the same time, the plug is the same amount of plastic as the lid. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation in that you end up having to choose the lesser of two evils in this case. Either we use the same amount of plastic by increasing the amount of the plugs, but at the same time, it's the same issue where you can't stack them. You can't carry them in large quantities. And you end up using more material if you start giving out the trays to do that whole thing.
So when you say the plugs, presumably they're not biodegradable either?
They're not. We haven't found them made in biodegradable either.
What does happen when this gets into more detail, but anyway, when the lids go through the digester, which I assume lots of them do they come out and end up going into the plastic residuals? Do they get something else happen to them or what?
Yes, the ones that don't break down, if they're not compostable, all the ones that are set up by by our bylaw, we requested that they all get certified by the BPI, Biodegradable Products Institute. Those all break down completely in a commercial composter, which is what we have. And the ones that do not, for example, those cups, they do come out on the other side and they get taken care of in the plastic residual.
Yeah, gotcha. Along with the plastic bags.
Same
Which
situation.
is, just to remind us all, I used to hear the comment that the bags were 65% of the residuals or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's an interesting problem. So we're requiring bags, and yet on the other end, they're costing us a lot of money to bale and take care of those same bags. And that's not your issue, but
No, I mean,
but it's a related
if
issue.
it was available,
Yeah.
I would be buying them right now because as I'm running out of product, I have found almost everything to replace. I've found something to replace what we're using that's not compostable. That's the only thing I can't find, and none of my manufacturers can find that right now either.
We couldn't either.
Yeah.
So, and Rick, the same question that you're having is it's also the bigger question that you as a selectman and the select board has to look into on the landfill side.
Yeah, we got a
Because-
real issue there. But anyway, it's a real problem. So
Exactly.
I think my reaction is a waiver that we could put an end date on is
That's what I
one way to
was going to
think.
suggest, a temporary,
Yeah,
give her a temporary waiver
and let's
until,
see what
Is-
happens.
It was my understanding when Ann emailed me that this waiver was for 1 year and it needed to be revisited in a year, so that I had a year to try and find a product that would satisfy.
That's
But,
what's
you know.
laid out in the regulation, a year.
yeah, I'm okay with that. All right,
All right, so
I make a motion that we give her a temporary waiver for,
A year.
You said, I don't know, what do you say, a year?
The regulation defines a year.
All right.
Why don't we
For a
put the
year.
year in the motion then?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
with the year in motion, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for even bothering to show up and bring us the issue. You might have just kept on going, right? How would we know?
Well, but that's the point, is that, I want you to know that I'm not doing it behind
Yeah,
anybody's
no,
back.
and we understand,
We're trying. I think everybody's trying.
Yeah, and lots of others are involved on, these are specific issues and they got to get resolved.
Right.
So,
Yeah. But thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the extension for the deadline for sewer connection at 8 Knobska Way. This is a request to not connect the sewer until the property is transferred, which there is a offer to purchase and sale right now on the property. However, the system on this property is hydraulically failed, so it does need to be replaced or connect to sewer as soon as possible. As of right now, the deadline for the connection is September 1st. They are requesting that they can get pushed back until the property transfer is complete. I'll let you finish the rest.
And I'm going to have to recuse myself because I'm involved with the property. And if you want to take this, or Jim.
You can take, go ahead. You want to take it?
as the former vice chair, why don't
All
you
right.
take it?
All right.
It will stick to the official
Okay,
team.
good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Cartwright. I represent the petitioner, who is Janet Duane, who's the conservator of Catherine Allen, who's the owner of the property at 8 Knobska Way. Mr. Santamaria is correct. The property does have a purchase and sale agreement that is being signed today on the property. The property will pass. However, since we have been in contact with the Board of Health, we have heard from Toscana, if I may give this to you, which indicates that because of their schedule, they may not be able to get to do the installation until the end of January of 2017, and that's what the letter is there. We are investigating other contractors. Ms. Duane works for Toscana and got the price that's listed there. And we have monies scheduled to be held in escrow to do the connection. But Mrs. Allen, who's the owner of the property, has been in our island home since August of 2015. She was surviving, well, living on a reverse mortgage and her late husband's pension, and didn't have the savings to do the connection prior to her becoming disabled. As a result, we're asking for an extension of the time or a variance of the time of when the penalty would go into effect to connect to the sewer until at least February 1st now of 2017.
When is the closing date?
The closing date is scheduled for September. We've just signed the P&S. We have had to obtain a license to sell through the purchase and sale agreement. We're hoping to close before the end of September. But it's being sold to an off-island person who knows David Buckley is an individual who is representing the buyer, and they're coming from Connecticut.
Well, I was going to ask about a deadline, but this has an automatic deadline in the request anyway, so that if the sale falls through and you don't have a backup sale, the kind of question is at what point do we have to do something else, or what happens then?
Well, there are a couple of things that are in the offing. Because it was a reverse mortgage, and Mrs. Allen is now out of the house, the reverse mortgage has become due, and the lenders are moving forward to foreclose on it, absent the purchase and sale agreement that we have. They would be going forward with a foreclosure sale unless we are able to sell this property. So as far as whoever buys it, is,
Ends up with a responsibility, one way or another.
one way or the other.
Well, if the sale doesn't go through,
Yes.
the lender will foreclose on the house?
They've already filed an order of notice for the Soldiers and Sailors Act. When we received that, we contacted them and told them that we're negotiating for the property. If the purchase and sale falls through, I I'd have to advise them that the sales fall through and we have to try to remarket the property.
Well, the problem is if the sale falls through and they foreclose on the house, what is to guarantee that we get the sewer connected from the house connected to the sewer if the bank forecloses on the house and just goes away?
Well, you have two issues. First of all, the amount of money that's owed on the house is far less than what the house is worth. And whoever would buy it would be under an obligation to connect to the sewer, I'm sure.
So is there money in escrow?
There will be 1.5 times the amount of the sewer system will be held in escrow to connect to the sewer system, but those will be coming from the proceeds of the sale.
Right. But that's separate from the cost of, that should cover all the connection costs?
That's to cover all the connection costs, the engineering, and all of that.
So would that guarantee us, you being a lawyer, would that guarantee us that if the sale doesn't go through and the mortgage holder forecloses on the property, they would be responsible for hooking the sewer up?
No.
Since they would be the new owners?
No, the bank would the bank would hold a foreclosure sale. Whoever purchases the property would be responsible for making it comply with the system.
That could be a long time.
It could be, but, it sounds like a reasonable request to, under the circumstances, it seems to me, to grant the extension. And we can deal with the conditions at that time, Jim, if we have to. I mean, I'm not sure how else to get around it.
The other part, the other way for us to prevent the enforcement portion as well is, I would suggest getting a sewer entry permit. So at least they have the permit in hand. Mm-hmm. So once the permit has been issued, we won't be enforcing, we won't be ticketing them at all.
So that's not a problem, is it, to get that?
Getting the sewer entry permit shouldn't be an issue, especially if we already have the basic engineering done in the Toscana information. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest...
So we can make that a condition of any action we take.
Yes.
So in the meantime, how bad is the septic system?
Well, it's Mr. Visco could speak to that at another time, I'm sure, once he unrecuses himself, but I'm told it was a hydraulic failure, but no one is residing there at the
I
present
was
time.
going to ask, is the house empty?
Yes.
Okay.
It has
This-
been
this is
for
Al-
what, a year
I'm
or
sorry?
two? It has been empty for a year or two?
For a year, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, so also you might agree to leave it empty during the period of time we're waiting for a sale to take place, so it doesn't get used and.
Correct.
Right, that's,
Since we have a
Absolutely.
failed system, I believe it's deemed uninhabitable until it's corrected.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of, we would prefer to use Toscana, but with January 17th, January 2017 being their first available time frame, obviously we'll be looking for other contractors to put in the connection.
so Stephen, would we have to get disconnected from the septic system or not?
Abandon it?
They oftentimes, oh, I'm sorry.
So just for tracking purposes, it becomes very difficult for us when we've got 81 properties and a bunch of different dates for tracking. We're not going to find any of these people if they have their engineer contact our office, say they've been contracted to acquire the permit and, get the job done. Toscana can't do anything without a permit from DPW. So I think a simple solution might be just to have them get into a contract with an engineer, have that engineer contact us, and because with all these, I think we got 81 right now, I doubt they're going to be done by February. That's a lot of work to be done. So it's just an easy way for us to track it. They're moving forward with the project. They have a permit.
That's essentially what Roberta was saying, to get the permit. I want to make sure I understood.
Okay. So do we agree then that the house will remain empty? They will get a permit, start the process,
Yeah,
and we'll give them the extension till, what is it, February?
yeah, I think he mentioned February.
January
January.
2017?
I think he suggested, he has a date for January, but the extension could go to February 1.
Yes.
So are we ready for a motion then,
Well,
do you think?
it's up to you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I'll listen.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we grant a variance to February 1, 2017, with conditions that they apply for a permit and that the house remain empty. I think those are does that cover our bases?
What'd
If
you
not,
say?
Art, help us out.
After the permit,
engineered-
after February 1 and the permit, and also the house will remain uninhabited.
And the engineer needs to contact us to start the process.
Okay,
Okay. Is that a motion?
yes.
Second?
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The next one is once again, we need to look into a policy. At a previous meeting, I believe it was the October meeting, we discussed a distance policy for a forced connection to sewer. Malcolm and Mr. Cooper asked me to come up with a policy at that time to see what would be the most reasonable ways to do this connection to sewer, because we were finding situations over in Pinecrest and Onegan that some of the properties are just over 1,000 feet away from the sewer. And in that case, it's more expensive to run the sewer line than to replace it with a full system. So I came up with this policy, which you have before you, outlining what we would describe as the manifest injustice for the cost of connection to a sewer. In a nutshell, what it is on the second page, where if it's within 200 linear feet, then the sewer is considered readily available. People should connect if they are within the 200 feet, regardless of whether they request for variance. If it is between 200 and 399 feet, that's what we would consider moderately available, which we would ask them to ask for a waiver from you, from the board. mainly because it's in that situation where things like topography, the location, what they have to do, all that comes into effect that may drive the cost up to an unjust cost. And then anything beyond 400 feet away, we wouldn't really consider that readily available. That's definitely far. That's over 100 yards away. So we feel that in that situation, if they were to come to us with estimated cost from either Toscana, Reese, or someone, and an estimated to connect to sewer, as well as an estimated cost to replace their septic system, in the event that the estimated cost of the connection to sewer is more expensive, we wouldn't be requiring them to connect to sewer, just because it's just not reasonable at that point. And then in the fourth situation is the situations that we're going to run into, like the Nantucket Harbor Shimo right now, where they're expecting sewer over the next few years, but they are not available to sewer. So what we would request is that we wouldn't accept any waiver requests at that point until sewers become available, so that because we don't know exactly where the sewer is going to be and what the special case situation is on these properties. So that's the quick nutshell. The narrative is on the first page of the policy, and the quick and dirty, readily available, that we're going to be able to post on the website as part of their planning documents for sewer connection for anyone to see.
Are all replacements IAs?
No, we're looking to do this across the island. The replacements in IAs would be in any of the watersheds. In this case, for example, some of the properties off of Old South Road that we're going to be looking at shortly, they're not in any of the zones. So they wouldn't have to replace with IAs. Some of them are in the zones, like the wellhead protection system, which would be in an IA.
Right, so that issue is picked up by other regulations.
Yes, correct.
So some of those would revert to the one bedroom per 10,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. None of this is to supersede any of the regulations. We're not looking to supersede any regulation. Right. This is our own personal internal guidance document for sewer connection only.
But so sewer connection is triggered by sewer abutting in the way.
Exactly.
Sewer abutting the property. So
access, exactly.
There's a lot of houses, just so I'm clear, there's a lot of sewer districts out there that are in the district, but the sewer's not in there. So,
and we're starting to run into that as
right.
well. Some of the sewer wasn't properly mapped. The GIS layer doesn't properly map the sewer. So in those,
even though you could be in a sewer district, but you don't have access to the sewer because it doesn't abut your property.
Exactly.
So, I mean, this is triggered by abutting your property.
Exactly.
Well, let's read it, because
In
that's
the
the question I had.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if we go down to connection to sewer, I mean, this is where I think it's picked up. Once a property is deemed to be within the sewer district as defined, the property owner shall be informed, and so on. He becomes subject to the required hookup regulation. Mm-hmm. And I think what Steve's raising in my note to myself here was, is it really within and abutting, or is it, which is the primary? If I'm within the sewer district but I don't abut, my property doesn't abut a road with a line in it, I always assumed I was not required to hook up.
Exactly. We are actually running into this situation in some of the GIS layers where they're putting, for example, we saw it on Milestone Crossing, where one of the properties is in the sewer district, but the sewer line is not on Milestone Crossing. They have to cut through another property to get there. That, in that case, shouldn't have been put into the sewer district.
So then, but should we add something about abutting in this sentence?
We can definitely add.
I mean, it's consistent with what our policy
Mm-hmm.
is. And I think we ought to be clear on that then.
Okay.
Okay.
So in the GIS number, and abutting.
And abutting, what is it, a road or a way which has sewer pipe available within it.
Sounds good.
That's what triggers it in the first place.
Right, exactly. So as long as we're comfortable with language that, or similar language, Roberto, then I think it says what we all expect it should say.
Sounds good to me.
Roberto, the other thing I want to bring up, so is if we pass this, anybody now that's more than 200 feet away from the road, before they ask for a variance, they have to come in with a price from what the sewer line is going to cost them to get in, also what it's going to cost them to replace it with a septic system.
It's what we already do for the ACO.
Okay.
So yes.
So that has to accompany them when they come in to ask for variance. We can't grant the variance until we get all those numbers.
Exactly, and we will take care of that administratively.
Okay, fine.
We talked a little bit about this, and I want to make sure I know what you're up to.
Absolutely.
So if I'm in a property that abuts a road with a sewer line in it,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to understand how this would come into play in that situation. I always assumed it wouldn't matter. Let's say my lot is, to make the extreme case, 1,000 feet deep, and my house is 600 feet back from the road.
Mm-hmm.
Does this start to pick up and become effective then, or I would have assumed because I'm abutting that road, I'd have to hook up to the sewer?
That's
Period.
that is the way the regulation does read.
So we're suggesting, let's say I'm in the Harbor Watershed District, which might be more typical and have some larger lots.
Mm-hmm.
And those lots might be deep enough, and the house might be situated such that this opportunity to seek a waiver becomes available to them when we didn't intend it to because of the situation within the Harbor Watershed District.
That's an excellent point, and we can.
This is also going to, like, just to carry through on it, this is going to give people a choice.
It's going to give us the choice to accept the waiver.
It'll give them a choice if they're 600 feet in, and it's going to cost more than it would be. They could put in a septic system even if the sewer is readily available.
Well, that's why it's in the regulation to individually for people to come in and ask for a variance.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It,
But it also states that if it's more to run the sewer than it is to do their septic system, they can have the septic system.
In effect.
That's what it's saying.
It's setting up the criteria for the variance, and for us to deny a variance when they meet the criteria is going to be difficult. And once we do it once, it will become increasingly difficult. So maybe I think we need to think this through a little bit. I don't know
Absolutely.
how many properties might be subject to, how many situations might occur where this could very well be the case.
Every house is more than 200 feet back.
Yeah. I mean, if we ever ran the line out Pulpus Road, just to take the extreme case, all those lots on the left going towards the harbor, a lot of them are very deep, large lots. And the idea of running it out to Pulpus Road would be to get them to be included because of the issues of nitrogen in the harbor. And this might very well pick up half of those lots. You see, so I'm one thing, Roberto, might be interesting. I like having policies for what we do, but were there two or three certain situations that gave rise to wanting to do this now that were problematic for us? I mean, I can see the Old South Road. These are, I assume most of these are going to be the pork chops.
Exactly.
And there's some other issues with the pork chops, so we'll get to that. But what else is going on that gave rise to this?
Actually, this meeting, we had a meeting in, I believe it was October. I'll have to pull the minutes again, where a property across the street, I believe it was 101A.
Yeah,
Old South.
down the road here on the right.
Exactly.
South of.
Exactly. It was in the same situation,
landlocked.
and they were landlocked, so they would have to had cut through another person's property to get into that sewer.
I remember that.
And then literally across the street were these pork chop lots. So when we discussed the pork chop lots in that meeting, the board asked me to research a policy, try to come up with one, and present it to the board. So I came up with this policy with these criteria to present to the board, especially considering this meeting, all of these people are asking for the same requests. So it gave rise to this policy. However, what you just brought up about Pulpus Harbor and some of the Shimo is actually an excellent point.
You could exempt Nantucket Harbor watershed.
Well, Steve, that's the type of thing.
Mhm.
So I would encourage us to not try and adopt this tonight. Let's
Okay.
think through that situation.
This is
and
still in
maybe
draft.
draft an exception here, or, it's nice to try and think of all the problems we face beforehand. And I don't think we're under pressure, except for the fact we have these variance requests tonight.
Absolutely. This is still in draft, and this is an attempt to start creating standard operating procedures for the office. As you have seen in the last two meetings, there is a specific variance request on the docket that we'll be seeing next month as well, where the main complaint is that there is no written criteria and procedure.
Right, which sometimes is helpful for variances, but sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's
Because
not.
it starts to set up criteria that may or may not always be applicable, or you may really not want to use that criteria in all situations. So
Exactly.
there are good things about this, and there's some questions here.
Right.
So this is all in definite draft. I'd be happy to go back, redraft, look into exceptions, and present to the board. This is a living document
Take the
right
one
now.
we're talking about now, they don't have a sewer line running in front of that house, so
No.
it's not an issue there. But if they did, and they were more than 200 feet back, what would happen?
Exactly.
So,
Steve, just have a question for you. So yes, this is just a draft right now for the appendix. So if I can look into setting up exceptions, and then I can redraft that and present it to the board again in an upcoming meeting.
the one other comment I had in the note was the designing this around the replacement cost, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. That sounds rational because the option is a septic system.
Well, it simply says that if they get a price to do a septic system, and for instance, it's $25,000, and they get a price to do the sewer, and it's $35,000, they don't need a waiver because we're giving them a choice.
Right.
Exactly, and then in the other situation too, we're talking about the watersheds. Well, the watersheds require IAs, so
Right.
Mm-hmm.
in 9 times out of 10 in those situations, sewer is going to be much cheaper.
Right.
Right, and that raises sort of the issue of whether this is a good way to approach it. In other words, you also run the risk of people gaming the system and saying, gee, Mr. Installer, couldn't you suggest it's going to cost, I don't know, more or less, or whatever you're trying to do. You start, it's like
Right.
the appraisal business. It becomes an art, not a science. And I'm not sure where that takes me, but anyway.
It's an excellent point.
Well, why don't we get a motion to table it for
Yeah,
further
why
discussion?
don't we
And I'll come back.
agree to, I'd make a motion that we continue the draft and think about the issues we've raised and maybe any others before we bring it back to the board.
Absolutely.
I second that.
All in favor?
Sounds good to me.
Aye.
All right. We're going to jump out of order right here for a minute because to our intern's report, Abby. She has to get going, so she'd like to get this.
I have to leave at
Yes, sir.
5.
So Dabby.
Sorry we took so long. I should have
I
known
got to
that.
go to a wake.
Hello, board members. My name is Abby Silver. As you know, this summer I've been working at the health department as an intern. And my project this summer is really focused on housing, and it is in pursuit of my master's degree. So I'm currently at the Boston University School of Public Health getting a master's in global health. So when I started working on housing this summer, I wanted to focus on the housing need, because there are a number of different projects going on in the town and separately that involve housing, but they all come at the issue from the perspective of making the affordable housing stock above 10% of the total stock on Nantucket, which is, of course, a valuable endeavor, especially because there are so few affordable housing units. However, because I'm coming at this from the perspective of the health department and the way that the health department can act to mitigate some of the negative health risks associated with substandard housing, a lot of what I found was that there was a lot of housing need, but I couldn't quite quantify it because we were lacking in plenty of metrics to be able to understand how deep the severity of this housing crisis goes. So something that I'll be presenting to you for the next meeting, the next Board of Health meeting next month, will involve a proposal to start calculating and collecting data on the number of people coming and going from the island in the summer months and the shoulder season. So I just wanted to present that to you right now to see if you have questions on that for me. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the role of the health department for stopping the classic thing that happens when the health department becomes involved in a housing crisis, or not a housing crisis, a housing complaint. So if we get a housing complaint, we go into the house, and then what happens oftentimes if there's overcrowding or substandard illegal dwellings, we ask them to leave, and then they go to a different dwelling. So in order to kind of stop that chain reaction from happening and just moving people from different places, I will also be presenting a proposal for what I call a healthy housing project. So in order to not just evict people, but to give them access to resources, to start doing more unofficial housing inspections and to be able to give marginalized populations and people who are just curious more access to health inspectors so that they could go in to do an inspection on a house without the fear of just being moved, essentially. So those are the two things that will be proposed to you. In addition, I have published a housing report, or we will publish, I guess, when I present it at next meeting. And the housing report that I've written contains information on the housing need, all the housing complaints that deal with substandard housing and overcrowding, and then the risks to health associated with these issues. So do you guys have any questions for me?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Let's go back to the first part about people going on and off the island. I wasn't quite sure I followed the rationale for why you wanted to
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
work on that information. Could you go to that again?
Yeah. So when I was looking into housing need, there's a lot of ways to quantify the number of people who are on the island at a given time. If you ask anyone on Nantucket, they say 50 to 60,000, and that number is based in pretty much nothing, aside from just estimates, rough estimates.
I always like to say there are 30,000 bedrooms. I'm making up a number, and 2 per bedroom. We could have 60,000 legitimately sleeping. I'm sort of kidding.
Yeah.
At full capacity.
Right.
I think people sort of go through a process somewhat like that.
Yeah.
In their mind.
And then there's a number of different other ways to quantify it. So I've heard of using the amount of water that's being used as a quantifier for the number of people here, and also the tonnage of waste at the landfill. So these are useful pieces of information that can be used from a demographer's standpoint to assess that, but it doesn't really speak to the number of people who are here and require lodging, just because there are so many people here who come for the day.
So you're looking for overnight numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And because what we have in many different forms is the number of housing units on the island. So that's from Housing Nantucket's report, and also the U.S. Census takes information on the number of housing units on Nantucket. So if you could compare the number of beds or the bed capacity of Nantucket with the number of people who are here overnight, then you could get an accurate picture of the actual need.
So you know the units, just to follow up. Do we also know the number of presumed bedrooms?
In theory,
you know,
yes.
You know by the inns, each inn has
Right.
6 rooms or whatever.
Yes.
And you know the houses, at least they report they have X number of bedrooms, which I assume are in the assessor's database.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a fair amount of information.
Yeah, from one side. And then the other side that we're completely lacking on is just the number of people who are here.
Right.
And so another part of my report is going to be anecdotal evidence from the health department about this issue, because I have had such issues finding actual data So it's just kind of basically what Richard Ray said when I asked him about it was that we were scratching the surface when we get housing complaints and have these stories to tell, but actually finding numbers has proved quite difficult. So.
I'm sort of kidding, but I'm not. It's an interesting project, so I'm glad you're doing it. The town or others used to do it with cars, so they start with some assumed inventory, and then they know how many are coming across on the ferry, how many are leaving the ferry, and so you assume those that don't leave are still here. You start out with 10, and now we have 50,000, whatever the number
Right.
is.
Yeah. And I mean, so the airport right now takes enplanement data. So that's the number of people getting on flights. And they release that data monthly, but it doesn't really do much. It gives an idea of the difference in popularity of the airport between months, but other than that, there's not much
So
stock
you got
there.
the steamship has data, though, right?
The steamship has data for
Passengers?
their total number of passengers, so they don't, for the data that they release, they don't split it up based on coming and going. So just net ticket sales.
So they don't
The High
take-
Line doesn't release
so
data.
So you
and then,
can't go through the same exercise on cars with people.
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, you'll see that next
Thank you.
month.
Yep. Abigail has been very great in the office. She also created all of our outreach materials that I presented in some of the other board meetings. Her and Emma have been very, very helpful, and we're looking forward to continuing the internship program that we have here on the island.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right.
Okay, we're going to go back to 54 Hummock Pond. Helene's variance
Here we
request. We're going to hear your variance request.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we've heard. Roberto,
We-
do you want to go through the request and?
One of the problems too, because the gal that came to do the survey, that came to see, I guess, the people who are,
We need to speak at the microphone.
oh, it was so loud, I don't know why.
So the people at home watching TV can hear you.
The young lady who came in terms of the survey of where the septic would come from, I just want to point out, she talked about Hussey Farm Road, because my house is near that. I don't own the property. All right, that's someone else's property. My property ends, and the rest of that, rest of it belongs, I don't know who it belongs to.
We have
Anyway.
that, Roberto,
So that would need, I would have to have a variance on that
it's in the packet.
to boot. And
54.
coming from Hummock Pond Road would be at least 600 feet, minimally, I would say, coming from under the tar, the road itself, under the bike path, coming down. We've got a very, very long driveway, so I'm assuming that it's at least, would you say 600?
No, it's not 600.
Not 600, but close.
It could be over 300.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said that.
So as it stands right now, Regulation 69 would require this property to be connected to the sewer or at least have a permit to connect to sewer by September 1st. This property, 54 Hummock, actually has a sewer line going down Hummock Pond Road, and then it turns down Oak Hollow,
Oh, right.
as you see on the map.
Well,
And that line is present.
the other question I have is, isn't Meadowview Drive in the new thing
It's
for sewer?
going to be sewered. Their Meadowview Drive is one of the plus parcels.
Right, so the back house
Can also connect to the
could
sewer
get on
line.
sewer connection when Meadowview Drive, and it's right there.
Theoretically, yes.
So Helene, your house is in the back, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to go all the way out to Hummock Pond Road. You could get a permit. What would you have to do, Roberto, to save herself, and she could wait until the sewer goes in Meadowview Drive, couldn't she?
Does your property abut Meadowview Drive in the back?
Yes.
That's Hooper.
Yeah, it goes to a point.
A point, right, but you do have a spot there. I mean, you do know.
Paul, doesn't the corner of the lot go right to Meadowview Drive?
Yeah, well, it looks
Yeah,
like,
it comes to a point with three
Right.
properties.
Right.
that go to a point.
So she could wait, and her house could tie right into Meadowview Drive.
That would be the shortest route.
Yeah.
It is shown as through, but there'd have to be a waiver from the property owners to let me do that, wouldn't there?
No. No. If your property comes to a point and it abuts the road,
Well, no, it doesn't, does it? My property doesn't. It could
Yeah.
almost. but
They all fade away right to the edge of the road.
right at the road.
Yeah. As far as I can tell on our map.
We're not sure about that.
Well, you'd have to get the plot plan, look at the plot plan. But if it does, if that's the case, then her house could. What does she have to do to apply to get in the sewer that's coming?
She's already in the sewer district, and there is already sewer on Hummock Pond Road. To wait until sewer comes down Meadowview Drive, whenever that may be, when there's sewer already available, is a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, although, I mean, I guess the rationale, if we were to do that, Roberto, would be that it would be a less expensive connection because it's a shorter distance. Like, is that the rationale?
That's the rationale that I have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pure case for going back to the thing that we just tabled. You know,
Mhm.
she would probably be how far? 500 feet from
E-
Hummock Pond Road, so she would.
The scale for the map that you have is 1 inch to 211 feet. So it's
maybe 300.
at the most 300 feet away,
300
which would
feet.
still be required to come to the board for a waiver.
Okay.
So have and this, remind us, the Hummock Pond Road sewer comes how far down now?
It goes all the way down and turns down Ocala.
No, that's not. You can't go by that. That's not how it goes.
I didn't know the
I mean,
sewer went down.
the line that she'd have to tie into is a pressure line, which is across the street. That brown line actually stops in front of Teddy King's house, which is 59, and then it flows down. That's a gravity line. The line she abuts is the pressure line from Aurora
Going
Lane,
up.
which most everybody along that side is tied in. 52's tied in, 50's tied in, 48's tied in. Jimmy's old house is tied in.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So on this map, the sewer line is the gray line,
The-
right?
Well,
I assume
the
that's
lines
what-
on the, it's a pressure line they gotta tie in, which comes from Aurora.
The brown line.
They
I gotta
got-
get going.
GIS
I
has
have to
that
go.
wrong. This line is gravity that goes down Ocala and then goes through an easement back
I
to
have to go.
Aurora and flows to the pump station. But what they have to tie into is the line that's the low pressure line that goes up the street. That's what everybody along here is tied into. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I think, absent anything else, it would be generally difficult to make an exception where all the other lots are tied in. And you would expect this lot to be tied in like
Mhm.
any other lot, right?
Correct.
I think that's it. And the specifics of this case maybe are that it might be reasonable to run it over to Meadowview if it's 100 feet less in terms of the cost of that, running that 100 feet.
May I say something? My name is Paul Blair. I share the property with Helene. My house is the closest to the road. What we're seeking is some kind of, the cost of this, some financial relief from this. I mean, it's going to be a burden on me. I'm retired. I'm on Social Security, on a fixed income, and I'm just making it month to month. So I don't know how I could ever satisfy this hookup. We had our systems inspected. We had to dig them up a couple years ago. Helene has hers pumped twice a year. I have mine pumped once a year, and it's just going to be a real hardship on the both of us. And I think what we're seeking is something after the property's sold that, you know, if they can be hooked. It's underneath the bike path and across the street. There's a massive amount of wires in front of our driveway where they put the bike path, and all the wires, electrical wires, underneath the road right there. Towards the east side of the property, it's kind of wooded, so
So is there...
we're seeking some kind of a financial hardship.
I hear you. So there are two dwellings on the lot, a primary and a secondary?
Yes,
Is that what we're
we
saying?
both live there. It's just,
It's one piece of property, his house is out front, mine's in the back.
Right.
and there's just one of us living in each house. We don't have any children or any rentals.
No room for visitors.
And the other structure on the property, looks like there are three structures?
That's a garage.
That's a garage, thank you.
That was my father's workshop.
And we do have the loan program that could help in this situation, or?
We're down to only $90,000 in that program. We have applied for the next. That's actually on here. We're applying for the next $1 million right now, but the next $1 million is actually we're not allowed to borrow it at 0% anymore. So that's a discussion that we're going to have to look into about setting the interest rate.
Right, but in the meantime, we have 90,000.
We have 90,000 exactly.
First come, first served.
Okay.
Lock it up. That's quick reaction. So I'm saying there is financial assistance available in the form of this program, which is a very reasonable program. It's amortized over many years.
20.
And it would allow the connection to be made. And I'm not sure what the costs on a monthly basis are and the payments, but at least I think we ought to review that. Does that make sense? I mean,
We can look into the betterment loan for this one. This would be two separate betterments, one for each property, which also requires two septic to sewer permits from DPW. And I am not sure how DPW will do the privilege fee either. But I do know that the privilege fee can also be amortized. The only
privilege
thing,
fee can go on your tax bill and be paid over, I think, 20
it's also
years.
20 years, I believe.
So all of that is meant to help in situations like this.
Correct.
So one suggestion would be to try and go through that process, think it through, and hold this for a month and see where we go.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Are they helpful to do anything else?
We would have, players would have to apply for the betterment loan through the town for this. But in the meantime, the time frame is September 1st, which is something that we also have to decide on.
Yeah, and the $100 a day fine is, I mean, it's caused so much, for me, anxiety and stress that, you know.
So we all wish we had dealt with this earlier.
Yeah, and I'm just making it month to month, and I don't know what I could pay for payments as far as, you know, if it's $40,000, you know.
It shouldn't be that much, but
I have a
we
financial
understand.
hardship as well, because I don't begrudge it at all, but I retired early, and I shouldn't have probably, but at the time I had to, because I lost my whole family. And at that, I received $2,700 a month in terms of my pension. I'm grateful for it, don't get me wrong. But there are those who have retired more recently, and they're making, they receive at least $4,000 to $5,000 monthly. I don't begrudge that at all. God love it. You know, it's coming from the state, but and I'm appreciative of what I do have, to say the least.
And-
As Paul basically survives on his pension, but
Yeah.
and if he does any work, he does it with
Yeah, well,
I'll fix your car, you do this for me, and I'll do, that kind of
I
stuff.
mean, we don't rent. I mean, it's just the two of us
So
using it.
He works on borrowing to get it, and he doesn't get money. But,
And we're trying to be responsible by getting our systems pumped a lot. I try to, conserve every day.
You save the pump out fee.
Yeah.
So that's a positive.
Well,
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to get fined as long as they're showing good faith they're moving forward.
Good faith effort.
yeah. Well, how do we go about that? I mean,
Well, I think, let's be realistic. I think if you at least explore the loan possibilities and go through that exercise, and whether or not it would save you enough money to be worthwhile to think about an ACO on the main house connecting to Meadowview, we could talk about that. And if it was necessary, Roberto, we'll have to figure out how to deal with these deadline issues. We could give a 30-day extension for these discussions to take place. And I'm just trying to...
For up to next
Yeah,
meeting.
to be realistic here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to... We don't want to have $100 a day penalties either. So
yeah.
no one has an interest in that,
Exactly.
unless someone's not cooperative. That's a different situation. So.
Well, I just want to, it's just going to be a hardship for me, and I'm sure Helene is
Well, I
feeling the
took an
same.
equity loan out of the $1 million property.
So,
So obviously that's going to
yeah, I think we
come a
need...
day of rocketing, but that will have to be paid off. And I tried to get it for a lower amount, but they made me take it for $100,000.
So,
Anyway, that's life.
if it's necessary for a motion,
Yeah.
Steve, I'd make a motion that we extend the deadline on this by 30 days from the September 1 deadline, and ask that the owners talk to the health department and thoroughly understand the loan options that might be available to help them meet the financial needs to get connected.
Okay.
I'm good with that, okay? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, so we'll be in the office. Please come by to the office and we can discuss the options as far as this program is concerned. But feel free, you're not going to be... yes, where you spoke to Ann. So,
When we first,
correct.
the health services,
Yes, on 3 East Chestnut Street.
we need to do what?
So we will discuss the options as far as how the betterment works, the betterment loan options work, and how we can make this feasible so that you can be able to connect, or if we can postpone the way that we can get it connected. Okay?
So we can't just operate the way we have been.
The way you have been, this is an area that is both in nitrogen sensitive areas. The sewer is available. It is abutting the property. So there are ways that we can work together so that we can meet a compromise. Please come by the office so that we can discuss those options. Okay. Okay.
No miscommunication between us.
So the best time would be to call Ann in the front office, make an appointment, and so that we can set time aside so that we can discuss this. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. And the next one is 79 Old South. Similar situation. I believe Mrs. Egan is here to discuss her sewer waiver application. And she is asking for the same variance based on a similar situation. However, in this case, the system on the property does have a metal septic tank, which is an automatic failure. So, Mrs. Egan, if you would like to speak and give any more information on this property. Okay. Same.
Yeah, the sewer line is in, it's in her
on her
property.
side,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
on her side of the street.
Right,
It's
so it's
probably
right there.
even, her house is very close.
Yeah.
There's no reason, I don't think that she should hook up.
Yeah.
It's gravity line too.
So again, if the waiver's being requested because of, cost considerations, I would again suggest you talk to the department about the options for the privilege fee to be paid over time and for the connection fee possibly, in this case, it shouldn't be very much, hopefully, to be used for that fund. And let's see where we go. Does that make sense, doing the same thing we
Yeah.
just did? 30
Do
days?
extend it 30 days.
Yeah,
Yes,
but I think
Okay.
it's,
but I think she can hear us,
Oh,
so.
the most we can do is speak louder into the microphone at this point, or
Sorry, I can't hear you.
We're going to extend it like we did with Helene for 30 days for you to.
30 days?
Yes.
More than 30 days. I can't put a sewer in 30 days.
You.
no, but you can get an application.
You can get an
filed.
application or the permit. Once you get the permit's good for a year.
Right.
So you could start the process when you get back.
exactly.
Within the 30-day period.
Yep. So just
Right.
come back when you get back from overseas. Just come in and make an appointment with us, and we'll hash out a plan.
Thank you so much.
All right. I think we'll need a vote to extend the 30 day.
Motion
A
to
motion to extend the deadline by 30 days?
second. All in favor? Aye.
All right. Now, these coming forward, all of these Egan Lane ones are all part of these pork chop lots that we were discussing.
I see.
The maps are part of the packet.
Mhm.
All of these are in an abnormal situation where I believe it was described as one of the rat tails going down to Old South. These are all same exact situations. They are a significant distance from the gravity line on Old South. All the lines for the pork chop lot goes through the road, but they would also how would I explain it? That the property line, the way the line is written, the way the line is done, any work to install any of the sewer here would have to would require every person who is on these little strips to agree at the same time, because you would be affecting everyone else's land at the same time, even if you were installing one sewer line.
I think it would be like a surveying nightmare.
Exactly.
So that some situations, the houses are up next to Hawthorne and some they're halfway up, so they're
Yeah.
sort of all over the lot.
A couple are on the back of Hinsdale, some are
Exactly.
landlocked in the middle. Yeah. It's,
Does Hinsdale have sewer coming
Yeah.
down that far? 'Cause
No,
what's his name,
no.
Dawson is hooking up, where's his house?
it only comes up to the part way up after Marianne. That's the last manhole.
Mhm.
It doesn't show it on this map, so none of these properties have access to it.
Okay.
It's a private road too.
Right. But the fellow who got into the district is further down?
Yeah, and they
Mhm.
had right. They could make it gravity down to the line that went to the manhole.
All right, gotcha. Well, I think we ought to think about how, my first reaction is to treat these as a common issue. And I think, hopefully, Roberto, do we expect, are there 16 other pork chop lots around the island are coming in next week? Or?
Not that I know of. In speaking to Andrew, these sorts of planning decisions are never expected again.
Yeah.
So the pork chop lots that are here are the only ones we'll be dealing
Well, that's
with.
what I was wondering. There aren't 10 more over on the other side of town or something?
Not that I've seen
Not
yet.
that we're aware of?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. Of course, we'll probably find something along the lines, but to my knowledge, these pork chop lots that you see off of Old South Road, those are the only ones.
Gotcha. So that also sort of ties back into the policy discussion we had, and if the policy discussion was really for these and we deal with them as a group, we can still work on the policy, but it's not as demanding.
It's not as demanding,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, I must admit, some of these clearly running the pipe is going to be extremely difficult, some less so. But even, looks like the closest one is that Gainer's place, or what is the first one? I'm not sure who that is. No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, she's
So is this the closest one?
I
Yeah,
believe
that's the
so,
closest
yes.
one.
Yeah. and
76.
Even that's pretty far back.
And I think he actually plans on getting together with Dave Trost that owns this right here.
Yeah.
And they're gonna do their own thing. So
Okay.
this one and that one are gonna come to the town.
So they'd go away from
They
our
would,
problems, so to
yes.
speak.
Mm-hmm.
And the others are clearly even
Yeah,
further
they're
away.
further, way back.
Have they, so we might treat them separately then. I mean, if we expect they're going to have their own plan for their own needs, do we know, Roberto, have they come to the department yet, or that's just something Steve knows from his business?
I just know that from.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything yet.
Well, and normally you'd expect they're subject to the same deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Has-
Exactly.
Has Dave, has this lot come in for a waiver?
No,
Or he doesn't pork chop?
right, he does, he has access right to his own stub anyways, so he's in the
Okay.
process of hooking to the sewer, and he's friends with
So, yeah,
them.
so they'll make a
Might give him
deal.
an easement to
Yeah.
allow him to tie in.
So why, it seemed to me we might have a motion that takes care of those two lots and gives them 60 days and contact them and ask them to contact the department or something, so we know what their plans are. I mean, I'm just trying to see how you deal with this.
So what we can do is we can actually go through these one by one so that we know which ones,
Yeah.
and that they're codified in the minutes.
So if we think they're going to do a deal together, we might treat them together. That might encourage them to continue that togetherness. So if that'd be helpful, I mean, I'd be willing to make a motion that for those two, I guess only one of them is before us, so we're just dealing with,
Which lot is that
Well,
one?
I think it's 76A, which is Phil Days.
Is-
I just heard through the grapevine. I'm not sure if that's actually
the case.
Is he
gonna-
present?
the case, but
So 76A is the lot.
the closest.
The closest,
Yeah.
so, and because there might be something going on, I would recommend in that case, we give a time limit on the waiver and say we'd agree to waive the deadline for 60 days and ask the department to contact the owner and to see if they have plans that might help them comply, or whatever you want, however you want to do that. And the Trost property is not
76A.
hooked up yet, so we expect him to come in, or,
Yeah, and it's not even outlined on this one.
yeah. But I think we could separately, we don't have to have a motion, then ask the staff to contact that property, or what do you want to do? Well, maybe I am too. Well,
So we're talking about 76A.
76A,
We've
You-
already contacted.
oh, okay, well,
So
so,
that's why we're here.
here. Is anybody here?
Yeah, they've applied. Is there a representative from 76A Old South here? Okay.
And there's no paperwork. I mean, there's, that I can see, other than
The map is there.
but other
In
than
yellow,
that, there
in
isn't
yellow,
a-
yeah.
there isn't a form, they haven't filled out a
Yeah, they
request
did.
or a hardship or anything that I can see, but maybe they have and we don't have it. So Art, are you familiar with what Trost is going to do with his property?
Right, familiar with what?
With what Trost is going to do? He's the one just south?
78. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't heard anything from 78 at all.
It's not even on here, because
Yeah, because if he's connecting, he
he's going to
would.
connect. I know. His will be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I think we just ought to reach out to them and ask the number 78, are they going to connect? So we get the deal, we know what their intentions are, and we can deal with them, and then we ask if he's going to be in touch with and if he's working with the other property. And since the other property is specifically on our agenda, I guess we have to deal with it, so. And which one is that, 76A?
Yeah, 76A.
Yeah.
So, just to dispose of it tonight, I'd propose, Steve, unless there's something else, why not just give them 60 days and see what happens? Does it,
Sure.
you have another recommendation, anybody?
I don't know if they are already hooked up. I have to look at the database to
Yeah.
see if they already did get a letter from us and just haven't responded.
Right, you mean for 78.
8.
But since 78 isn't before us tonight,
Yeah, it's not, where, my parents' lot is 78, I think, isn't it? Out front.
You were 78A.
No, well, that's now the lot out there is 78, which is a separate lot. So now it's vacant, which has a sewer stub on it, but it's a vacant lot. There's nothing on it. So I'm not sure what number Trost is. I mean, he's 76, but what Phil Days is,
Yeah, Phil Day says 76A.
76A. I'm sorry, maybe, I think my parents is
68409 is not even in the database,
right.
which is 78.
yeah, and it looks like that goes out to the road, right?
They may
Mhm.
already, I would then assume they're already hooked up.
So if they're hooked up, we would hope they might work out a hookup with 76A,
A, right.
right? So again, under the circumstances, I propose a 60-day extension of the deadline for 76A. And
Allow them to
Work, yeah.
on something.
see if they're going to plan to work something. If they don't, we'll have to deal otherwise, but that would sure make sense for everybody.
And we have to,
Until we figure out what 76A is doing. But then we'll take the other ones.
Yeah.
All right.
So, do you want to make a motion for that
Yeah,
extension?
I thought I did. I move that we extend the deadline from September 1 to November 1 for 76A Old South Road.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So then we're going to the next one, Steve.
Yeah.
Go on.
80.
Now, are 80, 84, up through 80 all in the same situation? Can we
Yeah,
deal
they're-
with them as a group?
We could probably deal with those as a group. They're the ones set way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, both 80, 80A, they're all the way back up to Hinsdale. 84 is just 2 lots from Hinsdale. Same with 82, it's 1 lot. 72 is right on Hinsdale. And then 60 or 82A is 1 lot from Hinsdale. They're all the way in the back.
Yeah, it's thousands of feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a recommendation? Would you like us to
Wait,
issue a waiver?
I think we should.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We
Until
just want to make
sewer
sure
is
we're not,
reasonable.
we're working together on this, Roberto.
I think in this case we should probably waive it until sewer is reasonably available for them.
So why don't, if you need a motion, I'd make a motion, or I move that the lots on our agenda numbers 10 through 15 all be granted a waiver until sewer is more readily available than the current availability in Old South Road. Does that accomplish what we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
It's-
Sounds good.
is available until.
And
Have to make it up again, Terry?
Until such time as sewer is
Available. It's more convenient than the current sewer in Old South Road.
Okay, which is more convenient.
Yeah. Or more accessible. That's a better word than convenient.
Yeah.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
15.
10 through
15. Okay. Next one is Oak Hollow. We received this variance request from Mr. Sinkowitz regarding the connection to sewer on Oak Hollow. This is one of those cases that we were recently discussing, that the GIS map shows them as inside the sewer district with the sewer line going all the way down in front and abutting. But speaking with the people who actually installed the sewer line there, the sewer line actually ends at a manhole and then takes a 90-degree angle across over to the other Aurora Way pump station, and therefore the sewer line is actually over 100 feet away from even the corner of the lot here.
It doesn't physically come near his property.
Exactly.
So does this property not then abut technically a road? with
It
a
doesn't
sewer
even
line?
abut the sewer
So I
line.
think he doesn't even have to ask for a waiver under that policy. He
Mhm.
wouldn't have to put one
It-
in, right?
He received a letter from us mainly because the DPW has them as part of the sewer district. The way our regulation reads, they got a sewer letter. In this particular situation, with the sewer line really being so far and not even abutting their property, it's a prudent request to request this.
Yeah,
waiver.
but I'm not sure we have to act. I think you might just withdraw the letter administratively because it doesn't meet the qualifications to require a hookup.
Sounds good.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes sense.
That sounds good on our end too. The reason he was in there was because he was in the sewer district, but your request explained it all.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Joe Slinkowitz. I'm at 11 Oak Hollow Lane. I live off the island. I visit frequently and what have you. I pay my taxes.
It's good to hear.
Out of recollection, probably around 2007, neighbors gathered together, some because they needed sewer and others just to hopefully have a line for the future. I was one of those 9 neighbors who got in. It cost me $10,000. The money did stop over 100 feet prior to my property. It's probably another 100 feet into my property. It really would be a financial hardship for me to bring a line down the road for other people who were there, who still aren't tied in, who have the same situation as me. I know this town did give permits for 10A and B, which are 2 multi-million-dollar lots behind my house on Oak Hollow Lane. I was unsure why the sewer line wasn't requested at that time to be brought down, which is my plan, that if and when those houses get built, I will be tied in at still an expense because it's another 100 feet from my house. It's just my wife and I. We frequent during the summer, but not so much this year. We're very low users. Out of recollection, come 2011, the Board of Health requested that I have my septic inspected and what have you. I spent another $2,000 on that and what have you. The qualifications of that showed that at that time we were such low usage. Was there anything in our solid tank? Just to show you how, so I'm no impact on the environmental system at this point in time. Do I believe it would be to my advantage to have a sewer system tied into a sewer system? Absolutely. But at what expense to me to bring a line down the street for other neighbors who are then going to tie in at my cost? Could we all get together? Yeah, it's a possibility. But that would also require lots 10A and 10B to join in on this venture. If the construction does go through, which is, again, multi-million-dollar homes, I'm assuming $2 million homes, at that time, a sewer line will come down. I will tie in. I will get the permitting action, but I'm requesting a waiver until that time does come, unless the board feels that there's something else that needs to be brought to my attention. But it's just financially unfeasible.
I think you're good.
And accordingly, just what you said, 100 feet one way and 100 feet to my house, the cost is really great.
Approximately, for your reference, Rick, the sewer line is approximately where I put the little dot there. That's where it terminates. Even Yeah, it terminates over there.
And at my recollection, I did believe the line for my money paid, $10,000, it should have been dropped off at my house. However, it went across Hummock Pond Road up on the other side, so they're the benefactors, and it put me at a hardship.
Yeah, ask for your money back. No.
Well, and
They don't want
the
to
other
hear it.
lots,
They already have the sewerage.
the other lots will have to get approval when they want to, from the town
To connect.
to connect, and then when they do, you can connect then.
Yep.
I think it should be probably, in that case, we should probably do it as a motion as well, just the same motion with Egan Lane, where waiver until sewer is more conveniently located, because they are technically already in the district.
No, but the line doesn't abut them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we just agreed that we
Okay.
could withdraw the letter.
Then we can just withdraw it
administratively,
then.
and I
All
think
right.
that's a preferred way
Very
when
good.
those are the facts.
Right.
So I think you should not have received a letter, and the Board of Health and our health department will not enforce, require you to hook up. So you're good.
You're all
Thank
good.
you kindly.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one, the
Lobster trap?
At the previous meeting, at the previous two meetings, I believe, there was some discussion over the mobile food units, and Dr. McNabb did ask that we put the lobster trap on for this meeting, even though they are on the agenda for next month's meeting as well for their full waiver review. But this was more in light of the other mobile.
So this is sort of an update on.
This
how
is more sort of as an update on our end on how it's going. And if Hank, would you like to speak with that one? But generally speaking, there hasn't really been too much of a problem.
Hank Ross, summer inspector. So far, we've had an inspection every week with the lobster trap every Monday, and all but one case I've done those, and they've done a very good job. I have to admit, they brought it down each week and taken care of the unit, serviced it, cleaned it, restocked it, taken it out, very timely manner. A little different from the other user, but they've done a good job, and it's very acceptable. And I would say that they really should have it granted because they've done a good job and have shown up every week on time and in a very good condition. It's been very acceptable.
Nice to hear.
Yeah. So it's
And this goes to the brewery?
This is when it goes to the brewery.
Yeah, this goes to the brewery as well.
Yep.
And speaking with the manager at the brewery, she tells me that they're there every day cleaning as much as they do. So
Yeah.
the general request that if you remember when we were discussing this and deliberating this back in June, that the concept of the deep clean was a little off, but the way it was explained to me was they've been doing a great job once they've been doing that deep clean, but also even at the brewery there at the site over there, they are effectively treating it as their restaurant basically. So it's been doing pretty well.
Okay. Release of the betterment loan?
Yep. So this was, if you remember at the last meeting, we voted to provisionally accept an ACO for 74 Arkansas based on the payment of the betterment loan that was already on 74 Arkansas. So the betterment loan has been paid off, and we do have to do a release. We did do the delegation of authority to the board, to Elizabeth Brown, so that she can do it. But there has to be some paperwork signed by and recorded with the registry in order to do that first. So in this case, just to get the project moving, we put it on the agenda here while we take care of the administrative process of the delegation of authority.
All right. So are you looking for a motion then to?
Yes, we need a motion.
approve a delegation of authority to the staff to release the betterment?
We already approved delegation of authority.
So
in
we're
this,
just releasing the betterment?
yes, in this case, we need the vote to release the betterment for Baker Inventions at 74 Arkansas, and then we need a subsequent vote to officially approve the ACO for 74 Arkansas.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, you're good to go, Keith.
19 included in that?
Yep, 19 is good. All right. Yeah, and just a majority has to sign it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, a signature.
And then this. Shit.
So I'd like to make a phone call unless we're going to end up pretty quickly here. How are we doing?
Yeah,
Just
we got
one
one
more?
more thing, and then
Yeah,
we'll
just
should,
All right, then I'll wait. I'll wait. I was going to make it and come back, but I'll.
Acting as. Yeah, but the next
okay,
one
yeah.
requires a quorum.
yeah. Number 20, variance request to place a shed over a leach area.
On
Mike?
9 Beach Street.
I'm Mike DeGisi. I'm general contractor for the owner, and we're putting a small addition on the house, but she also wants to put a shed on the property, which there's a septic tank and a leach field, which takes up the whole front yard. It's down at Codfish Park, and not a lot of room. So we'd like to put it on over the leach field. One of the things that we're trying to alleviate any future problems, and I've got some use these diamond piers so that we don't disturb the ground or have to dig any holes.
But they do drive.
Yeah, they just
They do.
drive these rods into the ground, which
There's
are
a couple of those.
as unobtrusive as you can get, I assume. You know, I mean, we don't have to. I don't have to get below the frost line because it's a 12 by 20 in the building department. Doesn't require me to have
Right.
footings below frost.
These are those free sheds?
Yeah, so it's. I mean, that's the best system we can use, and not dig holes or intrude on the leach field at all. Low impact.
Have you?
So the shed, you know, if there were any issues with the septic at any point, the shed could be moved,
Just
whatever repairs or anything.
just pick it up?
Yeah.
I mean, have you submitted anything to the building department?
I've
'Cause
talked to, I've
mean,
talked
the-
to Steve about it.
the building is over so many 250
Right,
square
yeah.
feet.
Yep, and I talked to Steve about it, and that's why I say I don't have to have I don't have to have a foundation, and the piers don't have to be below the frost line, and he said I could use these.
What about separate? I mean, do they consider it a foundation? Those things?
I don't need a foundation under 400 square feet. I need piers, but
Yeah.
I don't, I forgot where the cutoff line was, but they do not need to be below the frost line.
Okay.
I could essentially set these on blocks. But this way we can, you know, just pick up the shed. It's going to be open stud, you know, it's not going to weigh a whole hell of a lot. So we can pick it up, move it aside if we ever have to service the leach field.
Because I was just thinking before in definitions of Title V, like they'd consider like a sonotube like a foundation. You know, like if
Right. Well, that's why this
Right.
this solves my problem with not. I'm not digging any holes into the ground.
Then you gotta meet, I think you have to be so many feet away from it. Yeah, can you, yeah.
So actually, Title V would, they don't address sonotubes or anything like that as far as setbacks from a leach or a tank.
Yeah.
But you can't have a structure over a leach field or a tank. That's there. You know what I mean. It can't be over it. In this case, it would be over it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just that's why I'm looking for the variance, is because we have no place. You know, the whole front yard is the tank and the leach field. So no matter what that's why I need the variance, is because I have no other options. But I'm looking at this as a solution that, should there ever be a problem, it's not going to be like we have to, excavate to take the structure out. It's about as low impact as we can get, where it can be easily moved out of the way. These things can be pulled out of the ground, with a backhoe. If we're actually doing work on a leach field or something, then these things can be pulled out of the way with a shovel, basically. I mean, I understand that,
I don't think I have a problem, but there are 10 others like this?
Yeah.
Is this the only one you know of? Is this the first such request you had?
Since I've been.
Yeah.
well, I'm just trying to do it right.
Yeah, just answer the question.
That's why I'm
right,
saying I'm
right.
trying to do it right.
I mean, there might be
we didn't
some.
want to, I didn't want to sneak anything by anybody here.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying this
Yeah.
isn't the only situation.
Yeah.
He said to do after the fact.
Yeah.
Because this is the first request.
Yeah, there might be some sitting out there someplace already.
I mean, there's going to be 6 of them. 2, 1 in each corner, 2 in the middle for the length of the structure that I need. So, and again, I'm not digging into the ground.
And
Is the way I see it.
since
as
we
a
haven't
plus.
had any such requests before, we haven't had to deal with this. They might have just happened, but that's another problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be the first.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just, we all sort of think of various lots like our own or something. You try and say, what's going on here,
I mean, I go ahead, Art.
Just wondering how big of how deep those garage are.
Those are like 32 inches. They're, the small. I only need the smaller spots, which are. I'm sorry, I think. 36 inches.
I mean, the only thing I would say is how you got to make sure that those, when you drive in you're away from that leach. Then you're covering the expansion area. All subsurface septics eventually fail, so they'll have to do something there eventually. And now you got to move a shed out of the way. How are you going to move a 250 square foot shed in that little jammed up lot there? I mean, can it be done?
Just roll it off. We have access to from the driveway side to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, that property touches the other road too, right?
Yeah, it's on Beach and Codfish Park Road. It's got, it has access from 2 sides. I can get to the septic tank from Codfish Park side without having to touch the shed. The only issue would be if the actual leach field, in which case I could just roll it off to the side and come in from the Beach Street side to do any kind of work on it,
As long as we're not running into the next 1,000 people who want to do the same thing, most people, as you say, I think if their leach field is deep enough, they probably don't even think about this if they're putting up one of those sheds.
So the agenda says that there's a bathroom in the shed?
Yeah, it's a studio shed,
So
cabana
this is really
type
gonna
deal.
be
It's a dwelling.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't think of it
It's not a dwelling. It's not going to be used as a dwelling.
just as a bathroom.
I mean-
In case someone needs to pee while they're doing the lawn.
Right.
which is why I'm here tonight, is I know that because we have a bathroom in it, to shower off from the beach and use it as a bathroom.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's I've seen this. Is that septic large enough for a?
Yes, it's a 3-bedroom.
It's 3, but
There's only 2 bedrooms in the house.
So that basically would constitute another bedroom. Once a bed.
Right. I mean, I talked to Steve and I went down and talked to Ann, and because I knew there was going to be an issue here, which is why I'm here for the variances. I know I have a problem. I'm just looking for a little relief to get this get this put up there.
This bedroom put up.
We only have, we have 2 bedrooms in the house. It's a 3-bedroom septic, and I know that this counts as another bedroom.
And then the rationale for the rule is that occasionally you have to have access to the leach fields. I mean, I guess that's
When it fails, you have to replace it.
And also damage to it by putting the structure on.
Right, you don't want to damage it in any way. How
would we damage? That part, I'll agree with you on everything else, but how would we damage the system?
Well, driving 36-inch pipes into it could be detrimental, especially to the leach facility. It's not even supposed to be the leach facility, it's supposed to be within 36 inches of grade. And you're driving, so we would hope it's higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we would know how deep the leach lines are.
We could figure that out.
Finding myself being less receptive.
right.
I understand your reluctance. I mean, I'm just taking a shot at this that,
I would have to,
trying to do with what the owner, is looking at.
I
But,
understand. And part of the concern is once you do this in Codfish Park, maybe there are 6 others just
yes,
like it.
there are
I
some
won't
other,
tell anybody.
No, but as soon as there's some other cases out there
No,
now.
I understand, it's a touchy situation. I'm just, taking a shot at it, and I've tried to figure out the best way to do this without impacting the leach field.
I would guess all those houses have leach fields
Yeah,
in similar situations.
yes, they're tight. It's tight.
One good storm, that house is gone anyway.
Yeah, except it's been 20 years since the last one.
I think I'd probably lean towards, going with Title V and not having any structure over the top of the leach field. I mean, she maybe have some other options there of, looking at it, maybe adding on to the tank and moving the septic tank down closer to the leach trench. If you really wanted to add on to that house.
Coming out the side.
Yeah, taking it out, moving it down here.
Yeah.
You could always come in for a variance to setback or anything like that with the tank, as long as there's nothing over it. So that's I'm leaning towards saying no, but that's just how I feel.
I think there are too many issues here.
Yeah.
We started with a shed, and we morphed into something else. So I think it sets it has a lot of issues. So I think we ought to decline the variance request, and then you can deal with other options with the property owner. And there may be other options.
Yeah,
as
no,
Mr.
like I
Visser
say, I'm
says.
just trying to,
Yeah.
follow through on what the owner
Yeah,
wants.
no, I understand. You're doing your job, so that's great.
So need a motion?
Need a motion?
And then move to deny the
Second?
variance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, thanks for your time. I
Okay.
do
Yeah.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mike.
Interesting situation. Thank you.
Okay. And then the next two things should be relatively quick. Like I said, we need to request the next $1 million for the betterment loan from the SRF. In order to do so, I need your authority to sign the certified authority to file, so that I can sign on behalf of the Board of Health on this one, on that
So moved.
application.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay, so I'll submit that on Monday. The next issue that comes into the effect on the Betterment Loan Program is that requesting money from the SRF loan for these types of loans is no longer at 0%. They have set the new loan rate at 2%. So either we maintain our Betterment loans at 2%, in which case we just break even on the loans that we give, but it maintains the access. But the only other option that the state gives us usually is 5%, and that's where it becomes harder.
Yeah, I think we're doing this sort of a hardship for cases. We want to go for 2%.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be a deterrent for
Right,
people.
right.
That's,
Yeah, if we
I know it's a lot of work.
exactly,
To
it's
waive the interest and let the town absorb it, but you shouldn't do that. Well,
Yeah.
I'm serious. I mean,
no,
if you could
absolutely.
find cases which are more needy than others, the problem is anybody can access it. Do we have criteria for?
We don't have any. There is technically a criteria built into the ACO. We haven't necessarily
Yeah, that's all right.
agreed. We haven't necessarily paid attention to it, but the ACO program is based through the Board of Health, so we are allowed to set need if need be.
So do you want a motion that
We would
to set the rate?
we would need a motion to set the rate.
Say we set the rate at the same rate that we're borrowing at.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. And then just a quick report. Recently, I have finished a certification on an efficiency certification through the town, not through the town, through the Avita Business Institute called Six Sigma. One of the things that I'm going to be looking into doing is start reviewing projects and start applying a lot of that Six Sigma database, that Six Sigma response to a lot of our issues. The primary focus of Six Sigma is to eliminate waste. Waste being defined as superfluous processes that we end up spending staff hours and things like that that we don't need. The biggest way to eliminate waste that we've been working into right now is the electronic permitting, which we are working forward to implement that as soon as possible. The other projects that I'm going to be looking into is our own internal permitting processes. There are some issues with paper-based things that we have, paper-based applications, and then we also require all our designers and engineers to apply with paper-based application forms and carbon copies. So we have an entire file room right now filled with plans that go back to when we first started keeping plans. So one of the things that I'm going to be looking into is looking into the feasibility of digitizing some of that. So I'm going to be using some of the Six Sigma processes to review what the cost for something like that would be, how much cost would we save, see if it is even a worthwhile pursuit before we even start beginning the pursuit on it. Kind of a preliminary strategic thinking.
So some of these are large.
They're the large-scale plans. So our file room right now can fit. To put it in perspective, for the past year, we had 2 people in that room. There's enough for 2 offices in there right now, where it's just lost space right now. So that's one of the projects that I'm looking into. The other projects is I'm looking with the increase in our revolving fund. When we increased our fees, we've been able to increase the revolving fund as well. I'm going to be asking that we increase the cap to that so that we can continue the intern program through that revolving fund. The interns have been an invaluable work, and that way we can move forward into a lot of the tracking. That way we'd be able to pay them exactly instead of having to have unpaid interns. Right now, for example, Emma was paid for by the CDC. Her whole entire internship was paid for by the CDC. And then lastly, the tick-borne disease numbers were really low, abnormally low, and it didn't sit correctly. So Helena and I have actually been in discussion with this, that we, in conversations with some of the doctors, and same with you, we're in this conversation with some of the nurses, we know that the numbers are a lot higher. So I'm looking in conversations with Stephen Tidd to get the actual numbers of tick-borne diseases. We still haven't received the July numbers yet.
It's August 18th,
Exactly.
and we need the doctor's offices. I mean, this is completely inaccurate.
It's absolutely inaccurate. And one of the
And I
conversations
can look at last year, we had 257 cases.
by
in
this
September,
time.
And now we have 30.
Exactly.
It's not.
It's just not
And Tim Lepre has at least 30 in his office.
in his office alone. He's probably the numbers that we see. So it's one of those things that we know that there is not proper reporting, and it's been brought up to my attention before, and I've brought this up to Dr. Lepre as well, that it is a state law to report this information. And by them not reporting the information, they are opening themselves to major liability, even as far as losing their license to practice. Monica Burrell from she's the commissioner for the public health department for public health in the state. In a conference with her last year, she explicitly stated that their license can be tied to this. So it is something that I'm going to be reaching out to the administration at the hospital to really start paying attention to this.
The only way we got numbers was when we had an intern that was
It was
specifically tasked
Abigail.
to do this.
Yep.
And the same was true prior to having an intern working on it.
Yep.
We were not getting the numbers. And, I think Dr. Hartman is reluctant to stress her physicians out any more than they already are, but there is a way to do it.
Don't you think there's already some reporting, like the insurance requests or something? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Some people will refuse to have the test,
Mhm.
and there's a 6-week period between the time, that you're bitten and the antibodies are created, and lots of ins and outs.
Exactly.
But,
The anecdotal evidence that has been given to me was, as soon as you find something that is a tick bite or telltale, you see the tick or you see that it's a tick bite, they just prescribe at that point. They don't even bother with the testing. But even then, the Nantucket Cottage Hospital is.
I go in, I beg. They say, "I got a bite. Give me this stuff."
Yeah.
Come on.
And that's the thing. The Nantucket Cottage Hospital is now part of Partners Healthcare, and Partners Healthcare has their own electronic medical record service. So if they're going to be trying to implement that into the Nantucket Cottage Hospital, well, now it's going to be part of their process, and they're going to have to do it no matter what.
We did mandate the pharmacies one year, and those numbers for doxycycline for 7 to 21-day prescriptions pretty much matched the numbers we were getting from the hospitals.
It's worth doing it
They
again.
didn't like us, but we have the power to do it. So
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and that's it.
Motion to adjourn. Okay, meeting's adjourned.